Hi, it's evening, and welcome to Evening TV. I felt like I might have been a little unclear in some of my recent talks about medication and the pharmaceutical industry, because I said a couple different things that I think could have come off as sounding contradictory, and so I want to be clear on what I was trying to say. On the one hand, I said something about that my son was in treatment for drug treatment, and they had him just completely over they had him on all kinds of pharmaceuticals at 15 years old. He gained a bunch of weight, he was completely doped up, and it was really inappropriate. And then I was talking about how grief, what I'm going through here with grief, is not mental illness, that's not depression, and it doesn't require medication. And that there is, of course, a very important reason for antidepressant medication, and it can be an absolute lifesaver for certain people. Those were two cases that I felt really inappropriate use. Over prescribing of those medications it's driven by greed, and it has a real destructive, deteriorating effect on our culture as well, because we lose a certain amount of compassion and understanding for people that are in grief. Emily Post was a person who wrote books on social etiquette, and there used to be whole chapters on what to do for someone while they were grieving. Well, we don't know what at all to do with people while they're grieving now. Now I can tell you what people do is they just stay away, and it's absolutely the worst thing you could do. My experience with grief, what was going on with my son, has been really pretty brutal, is because people just haven't risen above to reach out to me, and that's been really intense. People just don't know what to do, so they just kind of avoid me. It's extraordinarily isolating. I understand that to be true for people that weren't already set up to be as isolated as I was by the whole circumstances that came before my son's death. Even people with much more normal circumstances, without nearly as much trauma and without nearly as much dysfunction and estrangement and all that as I had, also end up feeling really isolated because people just don't know how to handle grief. But my point was about that it's not a time for medication. That's certainly not going to help anything, and that the only thing there is to do is to grieve and to get through it, and to come out the other side with whatever gifts are part of it, whatever gifts come, whether that's increased compassion, whether that's an ability from me to be able to help a person in grief, because we're just so bad at it. I don't know what the gifts will be, but I do know that medication isn't the thing to do. I do know also that when my son was in treatment at 15 years old, his first time ever in treatment, that all that medication wasn't the thing to do for him either. He was really depressed, and they were really concerned about how depressed he was, but he had every right to be depressed. That wasn't a biochemical problem. That was a circumstantial problem. He had a lot of things wrong with his circumstances, a lot of things wrong with his family, and a lot of things wrong with, that were going on around him that were wrong and needed to be fixed. So it was just really wrong that he was given all those medications, and I didn't object to it for a couple of reasons. One was because I was in the middle of this custody thing, and I was really fairly powerless. Once I got my son into that treatment, I lost control of it. I couldn't really get him out. I couldn't, it was crazy. Because when I say that, it's because if I had, then that would have been read by the courts as that I was an irresponsible parent. So it was all really brutal. But also because at that time, I trusted, we were at the top place. We were at the top place for children under 18 who had both addiction and mental illness, depression. And it should have been, just impeccable treatment. It really wasn't. There were underqualified counselors there, and I see that all now in retrospect, looking at it. But at the time, I was even starting to see it at the time, and they could see that I could see it, and that was also not working out well for me. It's some of the things that happened there, and I was just trying to protect my son. So it was bad, but the day that I ended up taking him out of there, he was 43 pounds heavier than he was the day I brought him in, and he wasn't underweight when I brought him. And they took him to another facility for 30 days. He could barely stay awake during the interview to get into the other place. It was just awful. Anyway, but then on the flip side of that same discussion, I was talking about that there were times when we are not offering medications that we completely should. And so, and this is when I was talking about Iboga. I was talking about the Iboga plant and how this is outlawed in this country. We have a raging heroin addiction problem, a raging problem. And there is in the world existing a plant, a hallucinogenic plant medicine that can stop the cravings and end the addiction, end the withdrawal symptoms immediately. And it's outlawed in this country. There's something really wrong with that. I mean, the argument is, what I said in my other video, the argument is that it's got high abuse potential and no medical purpose, which are both completely false. But high abuse potential, even if that was true, you would be hard pressed to prove that it's has a higher abuse potential than heroin. You know, I mean, come on, this is what we're up against. And I mean, more people are dying now from heroin overdoses than car accidents. It's outrageous. And the percentages of people between the ages of, I think it's 17 and 25, are just astronomical. It's it's a big, big problem. And so it seems like, there is a time to be cautious or whatever, but there's something else going on there when there is a natural plant material that can get rid of the symptoms, get rid of all the things that make heroin addicts the most scared to get off, which is, they're going to get really sick and have all those symptoms. And I know it works because I've seen my son do it. Of course, you still have to get at why you were using in the first place. Of course, you do still have to do that work, and but at least you can do that then. At least you can do that then. You can get clean and you can do that work. So that's what I was saying about that. And then the other thing that I had said about pharmaceutical use was, just that we have to use some common sense. Was that there is this a drug called Vivitrol, which is legal in the country, Vivitrol, but that we were advised not to give it to my son because he had hepatitis C, and it's hard on your liver. And of course, this is just a logic issue. When a person is up against intravenous drug use, a daily habit of IV drug use, and they've got hepatitis C, they really have bigger fish to fry. They have immediate problems. The liver issue is not going to kill you immediately, but the heroin is. So that kind of logic just doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, why wouldn't you be thinking about arresting the problem immediately and then dealing with getting his liver healthy? In tracking my son's journey through this whole thing, from when I first found out he was doing drugs and we first got him to treatment, to him dying 5 years later. It was a 5-year journey. I'm just kind of trying to bring to my videos some chance for you guys to benefit from some of what I saw, some of what I learned, and what I definitely saw was something besides a genuine concern and top medical care, something else driving what was going on with drug treatment. And that something else was, it seemed to me, economic based. It was the pharmaceutical industry, and it was also owners of some of these rehabs that looked to me to be expensive real estate with a way to get scared parents to pay your mortgage off. They just really did. The worst offender of this was the very first place that I sent my son, and there were celebrity clients there, but it was super expensive, and it was in Malibu, and this is where he had underqualified counselors and an overuse of pharmaceutical drugs, and the counselors did not make use of the information they had available to them. They did not make use of what my son was telling them, and so they subjected him to more intimidation and manipulation of his father while he was after he got to treatment, and he was in way worse shape after 90 days of being there, way worse shape than he was when he got there. He was on more drugs. He was more mentally spun out and confused and angry and all of that than he was when he got there. So I know a lot about treatment, and I have not seen. I know it's the best thing we've got going on, because the other options are, jail, which is of course no good, and letting people die on the streets. But the state of treatment is really pretty bad when it's got about a 90% failure rate. So something really needs to change. There are things that we could be doing differently, and it's a matter of awareness. It's a matter of people making themselves aware of what the problem is and becoming informed consumers. So, and protecting your kids, because once they're addicted to, they're really helpless. They really are. They really need us to intervene and help them, because they're just no good to themselves. Yeah, they have something else that's really taken over their brain. So, okay, so that's where I stand on the whole pharmaceutical thing, and that hopefully that clears it up. So, basically, I'm saying grief is not depression, doesn't require medication. Addiction doesn't require that kind of medication either. But when you're up against a substance as seriously, you're a serious heroin addict, you should be afforded the option of, there were 2 medications that my son was denied in this country. I denied Iboga completely, which a lot of people don't even know about. And then the other one was the Vivitrol, which is basically, Vivitrol is a shot that makes the heroin not work, makes opiates not work. It's for alcohol and opiate use. It's with alcohol use, there's another thing too that they can give you that makes you sick if you do alcohol, and this doesn't work like that. This just makes it not work. So anyway, those were things that I saw with pharmaceuticals that I thought were inappropriately used or not used, and there's something else driving that other than the well-being of the person. So if you are dealing with any of these issues, grief, addiction, or a loved one it's wise to inform yourself. Okay, thanks a lot, you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.